The toxic atmosphere of Minerva 9 burned Elena Rodriguez's lungs with every shallow breath. Her environmental suit, patched together from scavenged mining equipment, wheezed and sputtered with each movement. Around her, the endless expanse of the processing facility stretched like a metallic hellscape, a testament to Zentarian industrial might and human suffering. Maria Rodriguez lay crumpled against a rusted maintenance conduit, her eyes still open but devoid of the fierce spark that had defined her entire life. The Zentarian overseer, a towering insectoid creature named Krasnak, stood nearby, his multiple eyes clicking with a sound that was part mechanical, part biological. Blood, Maria's blood, dripped from the neural disruptor in his upper manipulator, still steaming from the fatal discharge. Inefficient worker, Krasnak chittered in the universal translation frequency. Production quotas must be maintained. Elena's world narrowed to that moment. She had watched her sister die for a momentary hesitation while operating a toxic ore processing unit. Maria had noticed a potential system failure that could have killed several workers. Her split-second pause to ensure safety had been her death sentence. The mining colony was a hellscape designed to extract maximum labor with minimum consideration for life. Humans were considered nothing more than disposable organic machines, ranked lowest in the Zentarian social hierarchy. Entire generations had been born into this system, their lives measured in productive output and disposal efficiency. But Elena was different. Where others saw hopelessness, she saw a blueprint for revolution. Her background as a former military communications specialist, combined with her extensive knowledge of Zentarian systems from years of forced labor, gave her a unique perspective. She understood their technology, their communication networks, their hierarchical weaknesses in ways most humans could not. In the weeks following Maria's murder, Elena began to move differently. Her grief transformed into a cold, calculating rage. She started collecting information. Every scrap of data, every communication fragment, every potential weakness in the Zentarian system. The maintenance tunnels beneath the processing facility became her war room, a hidden network of resistance taking shape in the shadows. Other workers noticed the change. Whispers spread through the labor compounds, hushed conversations during mandatory rest periods, coded messages passed through maintenance shifts. Elena's reputation grew. Those who had lost family, those who had endured decades of oppression, began to gravitate toward her. She wasn't just gathering survivors, she was building an army. The Zentarians believed they had broken human spirit generations ago. They had systematically destroyed Earth's defenses, conquered its major cities, and reduced humanity to a servile workforce spread across multiple mining and industrial colonies. What they didn't understand was the fundamental nature of human resilience, the ability to transform pain into purpose. Elena's first recruiting tool was simple: hope. She shared stories of Earth before the conquest, tales of blue skies, of cities that touched the clouds, of a civilization that had dreamed of reaching the stars. Many younger workers had never seen their homeworld, knowing Earth only through fragmented historical records and Zentarian propaganda. These stories became a lifeline, a connection to something greater than their current existence. Her network grew. Engineers who could reprogram industrial equipment, maintenance workers who understood complex technological systems, former military personnel scattered across different colonies. Each person brought a unique skill, a specific piece of the puzzle that would eventually become humanity's revenge. By the time the first year of her underground movement passed, Elena had transformed a network of broken workers into something else entirely. They were no longer just survivors, they were architects of a revolution. The Zentarian Empire would learn a brutal lesson. You can break a body, but you cannot crush the human spirit. In the toxic darkness of Minerva 9, surrounded by the ghosts of countless human workers, Elena Rodriguez made a promise. Not just to her dead sister, but to every human who had suffered under Zentarian oppression. Vengeance would come, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The asteroid belt between Sigma Quadrant and the Zentarian core worlds was a graveyard of forgotten dreams. scattered among the tumbling rocks and ice fragments, hidden from sensors and surveillance. Humanity's greatest revenge was taking shape, one molecular circuit at a time. Dr. Michael Chen hunched over a holographic display, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that would have seemed like magic to the Zentarian overseers. What looked like a simple maintenance drone to external scanners was actually a complex manufacturing node, a piece of a much larger puzzle that would become humanity's ultimate weapon. "Another section complete," he muttered, watching as microscopic assemblers created components so advanced they defied current technological understanding. Around him, a network of similar stations worked in perfect, undetectable synchronization. Each was staffed by humans who had been discarded, underestimated, and forgotten by the Zentarian Empire. The uprising wasn't just about building weapons. It was about reimagining technological possibility. Take Aria Rodriguez, Alina's distant cousin and a prodigy in quantum communication systems. Where Zentarian technology relied on massive centralized networks, she was developing a distributed communication system that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Each component was so small, so innocuous, that it could pass through standard scanning systems without triggering a single alarm. In a frozen moon research station, Kaito Nakamura, a former mining engineer, was repurposing industrial equipment into something far more dangerous. Plasma cutters became precision weapons, or refinement systems transformed into advanced shield generators. The very tools of their oppression were being turned into instruments of liberation. The Zentarians had a fundamental misunderstanding about human potential. They saw humans as replaceable labor, not realizing that every system they forced humans to maintain was also a system humans were learning to master. Each repair, each maintenance cycle was a lesson in engineering, in adaptation, in survival. Alina's network wasn't just building a fleet. They were creating a revolution of technological innovation. Communication between resistance cells happened through incredibly complex methods. A maintenance log here, a seemingly random data burst there, quantum encrypted messages hidden in background radiation. To an outside observer, it would look like nothing more than standard industrial noise. But beneath this calm surface, a storm was brewing. The first prototype ships began to take shape in hidden shipyards carved into massive asteroids. They were unlike anything the Zentarian military had ever encountered, smaller than standard warships, but with computational capabilities that made their massive dreadnoughts look like obsolete relics. Adaptive hull materials that could self-repair, quantum-entangled communication systems that could not be intercepted, AI interfaces that could predict and counter enemy strategies faster than any biological intelligence could process. Each ship was a testament to human creativity, to the power of innovation born from desperation. "They think we're broken," Alina would tell her growing network of rebels. "They believe they've crushed our spirit, but they don't understand. Every moment of oppression has been a lesson. And now, we're going to teach them." The manufacturing process was itself a work of art. Components were created in such a distributed manner that no single location contained enough information to reveal the entire plan. An engine component manufactured in one asteroid belt, a shield generator created in another. Communication systems developed in a completely different star system. Only when these pieces came together would the true scope of human resistance become apparent. Intelligence gathering was equally sophisticated. Former human laborers who had worked in Zentarian communication centers, maintenance workers who understood their technological infrastructure, military personnel scattered across multiple colonies, each contributed pieces of a massive, intricate puzzle. By the time 5 years had passed since Alina's initial call to resistance, humanity had transformed from a subjugated species to a silent technological revolution waiting to emerge. The Zentarian Empire continued its daily operations, completely unaware that its own workers were constructing the instruments of its potential destruction. Every scan, every report showed nothing unusual. Production quotas were met. Labor colonies functioned normally. But beneath this calm surface, a technological tsunami was forming. Patient, precise, inevitable. When it finally broke, the galaxy would never be the same. The moment of first contact was nothing like anyone had predicted. Space itself seemed to ripple, a quantum disruption that defied conventional physics. The Zentarian Border Defense Network, a system considered impenetrable for centuries, simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, not damaged, simply erased as if it had never been. Admiral Krelnax of the Zentarian Outer Rim Defense Fleet stared in absolute incomprehension at his primary tactical display. Where moments ago a complex web of defensive platforms, quantum sensors, and automated defense systems had existed, there was now nothing. Not even static, not even the electromagnetic whisper of destroyed technology. Just silence. "Report," he demanded, his insectoid mandibles clicking with growing agitation. The response never came. Across 37 strategic defense points, every single Zentarian communication node went dark simultaneously. It was as if someone had simply switched off the galaxy's most advanced defensive network with a single, impossibly precise command. On the human side, Elena Rodriguez watched with cold, calculated precision. Each movement of her fleet was a carefully choreographed dance of technological supremacy. The quantum entanglement communication system developed by her team allowed for instantaneous coordination that the Zentarians couldn't even comprehend, let alone counter. "Target acquisition complete," announced Captain David Rodriguez, no relation to Elena, but carrying the same fire in his voice. Zentarian Border Defense Network neutralized without a single kinetic weapon discharge. The human ships were unlike anything in galactic military history. Smaller than standard warships, they moved with a fluidity that seemed to defy known physics. Each vessel was more than just a weapon. It was a living, thinking computational matrix. AI systems that could predict and counter enemy strategies faster than any biological intelligence could process. What the Zentarians didn't realize was that this wasn't just an attack. It was a complete reimagining of warfare. Their defensive platforms didn't just go offline. They were systematically reprogrammed, their own systems turned against them. Quantum communication pathways were hijacked, rewritten, transformed into a massive distributed network that the humans could manipulate at will. "They won't even understand what's happening," Elena muttered, watching the tactical display. "By the time they realize we're here, we'll be everywhere." The first wave wasn't about destruction. It was a surgical strike designed to demonstrate absolute technological superiority. Communication networks went dark. Defensive systems were turned into passive observation platforms. The Zentarian military infrastructure was being dismantled not through brute force, but through pure computational elegance. Across multiple star systems, human ships emerged from quantum tunnels, technologies the Zentarians believed were theoretical at best. They moved with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. No weapon fired, no traditional attack launched, just a systematic, bloodless dismantling of the most advanced defensive network in known space. Captain Rodriguez's voice remained calm. Phase 1 complete. Total network infiltration achieved with 0 casualties. Elena allowed herself the slightest smile. This was more than a military operation. This was a statement, a declaration that humanity was no longer the subjugated species the Zentarians had believed them to be. The psychological impact would be devastating. The Zentarian military prided itself on its impenetrable defenses, its massive technological superiority. To have those defenses simply vanish without a single shot fired would shake the very foundations of their civilization. "Prepare Phase 2, Elena commanded. Let them feel the true meaning of technological warfare. As human ships continued their silent, precise infiltration, something fundamental was changing in the galaxy. This wasn't just an attack. This was the moment when humanity transformed from a conquered species to something entirely new. A nightmare beyond the Zentarian Empire's worst imaginings had just begun. The truth broadcast across the galaxy hit like a quantum shockwave. Every communication channel, Every data stream controlled by the Zentarian Empire suddenly became a weapon of unprecedented psychological destruction. Historical records, classified documents, unredacted reports, all simultaneously released, stripping away centuries of carefully constructed propaganda. Images of planetary sterilizations scrolled across screens, detailed records of systematic genocide, documentation of entire human colonies reduced to raw material processing centers. The Zentarian narrative of benevolent galactic governance crumbled in real time, revealing a history of unimaginable brutality. Commander Zeranel of the 9th Zentarian Pacification Fleet watched in horror as the transmissions continued. These weren't just accusations. These were meticulously documented atrocities, complete with original Zentarian military communications, unaltered mission logs, and forensic evidence that could not be denied. Humans had done more than attack. They had surgically dismantled the entire mythological foundation of Zentarian civilization. Each transmission was a precision-guided psychological strike. Not just information, but context. Not just accusations, but irrefutable proof. The broadcast showed the systematic way the Zentarian Empire had transformed entire species into disposable labor, reducing civilizations to nothing more than resource extraction mechanisms. Young Zentarian soldiers, who had grown up believing in their species' moral superiority, began to break. Communication channels filled with internal debates, with questions that had never been allowed before. The transmission included translation matrices that ensured every species could understand the full depth of the revelations. Elena Rodriguez understood something fundamental about warfare that the Zentarians never comprehended. True victory wasn't about destroying bodies, but about destroying beliefs. The broadcast showed human resilience in stark, unflinching detail, not as victims, but as survivors. Entire sections documented how humans had maintained their culture, their hope, their fundamental humanity despite generations of oppression. Each story was a testament to something the Zentarians could never understand: the human capacity to transform pain into strength. Defections began almost immediately. Entire military units started to fragment. Communication networks that had once been the Empire's strength became conduits of rebellion. Zentarian soldiers began to question everything they had been taught, everything they had believed about their civilization's moral righteousness. "We are not liberators," one leaked internal communication revealed. "We are parasites." The psychological warfare was multilayered. It wasn't just about revealing the truth. It was about presenting an alternative vision of galactic civilization. Humans weren't seeking simple revenge. They were offering a fundamental reimagining of how different species could coexist. Archival footage showed moments of human compassion, instances where humans had risked everything to save members of other species, even those who had been their oppressors. These weren't just isolated incidents. They were systemic demonstrations of a fundamentally different approach to existence. The Zentarian Empire had always believed in a hierarchical model of civilization: strength through domination, control through fear. The human transmission proposed something radically different: cooperation, mutual understanding, collective survival. "We are not asking for your submission," Elena's voice cut through the transmissions. "We are offering a different path." Across thousands of star systems, the fundamental power dynamics began to shift. The impenetrable mythology of Zentarian superiority was being dismantled, not through violence, but through pure, unadulterated truth. Some Zentarian leaders attempted to block the transmissions, but the quantum communication network developed by human engineers was unlike anything that had existed before. For every attempted blockade, a dozen new transmission vectors emerged. It was like trying to block water with a screen of sand. The galaxy watched, transfixed. Humanity was no longer a conquered species. They had become something else entirely, architects of a new galactic narrative. And the Zentarian Empire was about to learn the most dangerous lesson of all: a truth once revealed can never be hidden again. The main Zentarian fleet emerged from quantum transit like a massive metallic nightmare. Thousands of ships stretching across multiple light years, each vessel a testament to centuries of military engineering. They came expecting to crush the human resistance with overwhelming force, confident in their technological superiority. They were about to learn the true meaning of technological evolution. Admiral Krellnax watched his tactical displays with growing confusion. The human fleet didn't behave like any military force in galactic history. There was no fixed formation, no predictable tactical pattern. Each human ship moved with an intelligence that seemed to blur the line between machine and living organism. What the Zentarians witnessed was nothing short of a complete reimagining of warfare. Human ships didn't just respond to threats. They anticipated them, predicted them, transformed before the Zentarian weapons could even complete their targeting sequences. It was as if each vessel was a living, thinking entity, constantly analyzing, constantly adapting. The first wave of Zentarian energy weapons passed through areas where human ships had been milliseconds before. By the time the Zentarian computers calculated their initial targeting solutions, the human vessels had already moved, reconfigured, transformed. Dr. Aria Rodriguez, the quantum AI specialist who had designed the ship's computational matrices, watched the battle unfold with clinical precision. Each ship was more than a weapon. It was a distributed neural network, learning and adapting in real time. Threat analysis updating. Her AI interface reported. Zentarian weapon systems becoming predictable in 3.7 seconds. The human ships weren't just avoiding attacks. They were studying them, analyzing them, learning from them with a speed that defied biological comprehension. Where a Zentarian tactical computer might take minutes to adjust to a new threat, the human systems were updating their entire strategic approach in fractions of a second. Entire Zentarian battle groups found themselves outmaneuvered by ships that seemed to exist in multiple potential states simultaneously. Quantum entanglement allowed for communication and coordination that made the Zentarian military's massive centralized network look like a primitive radio system. "They're not fighting," Admiral Krellnax whispered in growing horror. "They're evolving." Each human ship was a computational marvel. Adaptive hull materials that could reconfigure themselves microsecond by microsecond. Shield systems that didn't just block attacks but learned from them, developing counter-strategies in real time. Weapon systems that could be completely redesigned mid-combat based on emerging tactical information. The Zentarian military had always believed in massive, unchanging systems. Enormous ships, centralized command structures, rigid tactical doctrines passed down through generations. Humanity offered something entirely different: flexibility, constant evolution, the ability to transform faster than the enemy could comprehend. What looked like chaos to Zentarian observers was actually the most sophisticated military system ever developed. Each human ship was communicating, learning, adapting in a distributed network that had no central point of failure. Destroy one ship, and the entire network would instantly recalculate, redistributing computational resources and tactical understanding. Tactical probability of Zentarian victory: 0.3%. The human ship's AI reported calmly. It wasn't just a battle. It was a fundamental demonstration of a different approach to existence. Where the Zentarians saw conflict as a test of force, humans saw it as an opportunity for understanding, for adaptation, for growth. The galaxy watched as humanity transformed warfare from a method of destruction into a process of continuous evolution, and the Zentarian Empire was about to become a footnote in that evolutionary process. The Crimson Nebula burned with the intensity of 1,000 dying stars, its massive electromagnetic distortions providing the perfect battlefield for humanity's most audacious military operation. Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the quantum flagship Prometheus, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to respond to her very thoughts. This wasn't just a battle. This was a complete systemic dismantling of the Zentarian military infrastructure. Quantum communication nodes identified. Her AI interface reported. Infiltration protocols ready. What the Zentarians didn't understand was that their own communication network would become their ultimate weakness. Each quantum relay, each centralized communication hub was about to become a weapon of unprecedented precision. The human fleet didn't move like a traditional military formation. They were more like a living, breathing neural network, each ship a neuron, communicating and adapting faster than biological intelligence could comprehend. Where Zentarian military doctrine relied on massive, centralized command structures, humans had developed a completely distributed system of warfare. Dr. Michael Chen, watching from a remote research station, had spent years developing the infiltration protocols. The Zentarian communication network wasn't just going to be disabled. It was going to be systematically transformed, turned into a weapon that would dismantle the entire Zentarian military hierarchy from within. First stage of infiltration complete, Elena announced, her voice calm and measured. Across multiple star systems, Zentarian communication relays began to behave in ways their designers could never have anticipated. Priority channels became conduits of misinformation. Tactical networks started routing critical military communications through increasingly bizarre pathways. Command structures found themselves cut off, isolated, unable to coordinate their massive military machine. It was psychological warfare taken to its ultimate technological conclusion. Entire battle groups received conflicting orders. Strategic defensive positions were suddenly reassigned without explanation. The massive, supposedly impenetrable Zentarian military machine began to tear itself apart from within, guided by an intelligence it could not comprehend or counter. They built their entire civilization on the assumption of centralized control, Elena explained to her bridge crew. We're going to use that assumption to destroy them. The quantum infiltration was multilayered. It wasn't just about disrupting communications. It was about creating a cascading system of misinformation and strategic confusion that would render the entire Zentarian military apparatus fundamentally non-functional. Priority encrypted channels began broadcasting personal communications between high-ranking Zentarian officers. Strategic military plans were suddenly available to everyone. The very systems designed to protect the Empire became instruments of its potential destruction. Admiral Krulnax watched in growing horror as his tactical displays became nothing more than streams of incomprehensible data. Communication nodes that had been the backbone of Zentarian military might were transforming, routing information through increasingly complex and meaningless pathways. What is happening? He demanded, his mandibles clicking with growing panic. The answer was simple. Humanity was rewriting the fundamental rules of warfare. Each quantum communication node became a potential point of infiltration. Where the Zentarians saw a network, humans saw an opportunity for complete systemic manipulation. Their adaptive AI systems could predict and counter Zentarian strategic movements faster than the biological commanders could even process the information. By the time the Zentarian High Command realized the full extent of the infiltration, it was already too late. The quantum coup was complete, and the Zentarian Empire's communication infrastructure had become nothing more than an elaborate, galaxy-wide trap of its own making. The Zentarian homeworld hung like a massive wounded organism against the backdrop of its binary star system. Massive city structures that had stood for millennia now looked fragile, vulnerable, a testament to the complete systematic dismantling of their once invincible civilization. Elena Rodriguez's fleet approached with a precision that was more surgical than military. This wasn't about total destruction. This was about offering a fundamental choice that would reshape galactic civilization. Broadcast channels open, her AI interface reported. All Zentarian communication frequencies active. The broadcast that followed was unlike any ultimatum in galactic history. Zentarian leadership. Elena's voice cut through every communication channel, translated simultaneously into every known language and communication matrix. Your civilization stands at a crossroads. We are not here for simple revenge. We are here to offer a choice. The choice was brutal in its simplicity. Surrender and face a form of justice that would require true accountability. Complete transparency. The dismantling of their hierarchical system that had oppressed countless species for millennia. Or face total extinction. Some Zentarian leaders saw the wisdom in surrender. They understood that the humans had demonstrated technological capabilities so far beyond their own that resistance was mathematically impossible. These were the pragmatists, the ones who could see the fundamental transformation that was about to occur. Others chose defiance. The Zentarian Planetary Defense Council, led by the ancient High Chancellor Vornak, prepared for what they believed would be a final glorious stand. They would rather see their entire civilization reduced to atomic dust than submit to what they saw as human subjugation. "We do not negotiate with lesser species," Vornak proclaimed, his ancient body wired into massive computational systems that had governed the Empire for centuries. But humans had already anticipated this response. The demonstration of power was both terrifying and precise. Human ships didn't bombard cities. They systematically disabled every single piece of critical infrastructure with quantum precision. Power grids went dark. Communication networks dissolved. Defensive systems became nothing more than inert metal. It wasn't destruction. It was complete, surgical incapacitation. "We are giving you a choice," Alina repeated, "not as conquerors, but as a species offering a different path of existence." The broadcasts continued. Not just tactical information, but a complete historical record. Documentation of every atrocity, every planetary sterilization, every species reduced to slave labor. But alongside the horror, a vision of what could be, a galactic confederation based on mutual understanding, on collective survival. Vornak and his loyalists prepared for what they believed would be a final, apocalyptic confrontation. They didn't understand that the real war had already been won, not through violence, but through a complete reimagining of technological and social possibility. Across the Zentarian homeworld, entire populations began to understand the true nature of their civilization. The propaganda that had sustained their belief in their own superiority was being systematically dismantled, replaced by a brutal, unfiltered truth. Some Zentarian military units began to surrender. Others fought to the last. But the outcome was never in doubt. Humanity had transformed from a conquered species to the architects of a new galactic order. The moment of choice had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. 5 years after the fall of the Zentarian Empire, the galaxy looked fundamentally different. The conference hall on New Terra, a planet rebuilt from the remnants of multiple liberated colonies, represented something unprecedented. Representatives from over 200 different species sat together, not as conquered peoples, but as equal participants in a new galactic confederation. Alina Rodriguez, now chief coordinator of interspecies relations, watched the proceedings with a mixture of hope and calculation. This wasn't just a political gathering. It was the physical manifestation of a completely new approach to civilization. The Zentarian survivors had been given a choice: complete transparency, systematic dismantling of their hierarchical systems, and active participation in rebuilding the civilizations they had destroyed. Those who accepted were integrated. Those who refused were isolated, their technological capabilities systematically neutralized. Dr. Aria Rodriguez, Alina's cousin and the primary architect of the quantum communication systems that had dismantled the Zentarian Empire, stood nearby. Her latest project was perhaps even more revolutionary: a collaborative technological framework that would allow different species to contribute their unique evolutionary adaptations to collective problem-solving. "We're not just rebuilding," Aria explained to a group of young researchers. "We're creating an entirely new model of civilization, one where diversity isn't just tolerated, it's our greatest strength." The transformation was visible everywhere. Planets that had once been nothing more than resource extraction centers were being terraformed, restored. Species that had been reduced to slave labor were now leading technological innovations. The very concept of hierarchy was being systematically dismantled. On the main stage, a Zentarian elder, one of the few who had chosen cooperation over extinction, was presenting a comprehensive report on the Empire's historical atrocities. Complete transparency was now the fundamental law of the new confederation. Every action, Every historical record was open for examination. "We cannot heal," the Zentarian elder said, his multiple eyes reflecting a complexity of emotion that would have been unimaginable years before, "if we do not first understand the depth of our historical wounds." The Confederation's approach to justice was unlike anything in galactic history. It wasn't about punishment. It was about comprehensive restoration. Every species that had been oppressed was given resources, technological support, and a platform to rebuild. The former Zentarian military-industrial complex was being systematically transformed into a collaborative research network. Nearby, a group of young humans from the mining colonies were presenting their latest technological innovations. These were the children of survivors, those who had been born into oppression but had never lost their capacity for hope. Their research focused on sustainable terraforming technologies that could restore planets devastated by centuries of industrial exploitation. Alina understood something fundamental that the Zentarian Empire had never comprehended. True strength wasn't about domination. It was about collective potential. The quantum communication networks that had been used to dismantle the Empire were now being transformed into a galaxy-wide collaborative platform. Species could share knowledge, technological innovations, and cultural insights in ways that had been unimaginable under the Zentarian regime. Dr. Michael Chen, the engineer who had been crucial in developing the adaptive AI systems, was now leading a project to create a galactic knowledge repository. Every species would contribute. Every perspective would be valued. The very definition of intelligence was being reimagined. "We're not just sharing information," Chen explained during a presentation. "We're creating a living, evolving understanding of existence itself." The former Zentarian homeworld had been transformed into a massive research and reconciliation center. Where once there had been systems of oppression, now there were collaborative research facilities. Species that had been enemies were now working together to solve fundamental challenges of galactic existence. Technological innovations were emerging at a pace that would have been impossible under the old hierarchical systems. A methane-breathing species from the outer rim had developed breakthrough quantum computing techniques. A silicon-based life form had created revolutionary medical nanite technologies. Humans contributed their unique adaptive capabilities and innovative problem-solving approaches. Alina Rodriguez looked out over the conference hall and saw something that would have been impossible just 5 years ago. True diversity in action. Not as a political concept, but as a living, breathing reality. The Zentarian Empire had believed in a universe of strict hierarchies, of dominant and subservient species. Humanity had shown them a different path, a path of collective potential, of understanding, of continuous evolution. As the conference continued, it became clear that this was more than a political gathering. This was the birth of a new way of existing, a civilization that understood its greatest strength was not in conquest, but in collaboration. The galaxy would never be the same again.